G'day friends, welcome to day 5 of JUNICORN. I am a little spooked because I've settled on a conversation topic for this voiceover, and as I put my hand on the side wall, Bianca had just come out of nowhere and attacked it. So I'm just sitting here petrified, but I'm going to talk a bit about fear today and some of my personal fears. I'm not going to get too far into it because I have the type of headspace that if I really go there, I could just lose it. It's kind of dangerous for me, and I pick up a lot of my subconscious, so I'm kind of scared that whatever I do end up talking about, it's going to just come together in a big, wonderful collage of a nightmare tonight. So we'll keep it kind of brief, but today's unicorn piece, it's so funny, the colors that you see in that palette over there, these were actually gifted to me. They're Daniel Smith half pens by the lovely Rhiannon, a beautiful follower that wanted to share some of her Daniel Smith half pens with me. So thank you again, Rhiannon. And it's so funny because I looked at all the colors, and when I swatched them out first, I thought these are super beautiful, and there's lots of fun ones in there that I've definitely wanted to own a half pen of before. But I never assumed that if you put them all together, they would kind of look like a rainbow. It was like the weirdest little surprise, and I think it was kind of meant to be because we're doing JUNICORN, and an accidental rainbow I feel like is very unicorn-esque. So, I mean, probably not really, I don't know. But I'm actually just going to paint the silhouette of this unicorn today, and it was so funny because this almost went very galaxy, so it's kind of appropriate that I'm talking about fear today, because you know I don't like space, but I ended up bringing in lots of vines, which if you'll have looked closely, you will notice are my repeating motif at this point in time. I seem to be bringing them into everything. I can't get enough. I just keep drawing these vines and leaf patterns. It's become very therapeutic for me, so I think that's super interesting. But I'm going to do this a silhouette, kind of all in black acrylic, and then do all these leaf shapes just because it was fun to paint, and then come in with some white at the end and put in lots of fun little words and highlights and, you know, fun stuff. I'll link everything down below. Unfortunately, I don't have a link to get half pens. I do. There is an Etsy store, Artistic Cat on Etsy, that I think a lot of us buy half pens of Daniel Smith from her, but I don't remember all of these names of these half pens. But I will have a Daniel Smith swatching of all the Daniel Smith watercolors that I own, and you'll see a video of that, and I'll go through each one and talk about which ones I would recommend, which ones I liked, the names of them, etc, etc. So just keep an eye out for that video if you are interested to build or expand your palette. So let's talk about fear, right? Everyone's afraid of something. Making my little list here, I figured out that I'm afraid of more than just a couple of things, but we'll touch on things that aren't too scary today. I'm a bit of a baby, I think. I don't like scary movies. I remember a friend and Steve were trying really, really hard to get me to go and see It. That was never going to happen. I did try to work up the nerve, though. I did a lot of Googling and a lot of just looking inside myself and trying to figure out what my issues were. But I was watching the previews and I was reading the synopsis, and honestly, the original It sounded ridiculous. And when you think about where the story came from and what, the other parts of the story, I thought it more sounded like a comedy than it did a horror film. But Tim Curry still looked way too scary in that thing. And then I saw the preview for the new one and I thought, absolutely not. You're not going to get me to see that anytime soon. I think if I did watch scary stuff, because it's weird, I have seen American Horror Story, and I know horror people out there are like, that's not scary. To me, I mean, that sends me right over the edge. So, I don't know. I'll say that sometimes I could be in a particular mood to try and, scare myself a little bit, because I think some of us kind of enjoy that feeling, or I think everyone does enjoy that feeling a little bit, of feeling a little bit scared. It's like that. It engages that fight or flight response in us, but it's also a safe way to do it just by watching a movie. But there are things that I just absolutely refuse to do or go and see. My Christian faith just, I don't want to indulge any of that spirit side because I don't want that dark spirit to stick around in my life. So I am generally very careful when it comes to things like that, like horror films and scary things, and no. Absolutely not. But other fears that I have beyond the obvious scary movies, I am deathly afraid of space and outer space. I don't know what it is. I have an idea. I think it's just, it's so expansive I can't wrap my head around it, and the more I hear these facts about space and, you know, how long it would take to get to this planet and how far away this thing is. Like, I don't even like to talk about it for too long because it starts, once my brain goes there, I find it really hard to take it back to a place of not being stressed out or anxious. And space is just, it's so unknown as well. I just get anxiety about it. I feel like I don't need to explore that. I don't need to know about it. I know that it's there and that's fine. I love stars. Sometimes I'll watch a movie, I'll watch WALL-E, but that's fake space because it's animated. So, and believe me, there's still parts of me that if I start thinking about it too much watching the movie, I do get a little disturbed. But, you know, I'm not going to watch a documentary on space. I'm definitely not going to watch that Sandra Bullock movie, Gravity. Like, I saw a preview of that and almost passed out. Like, I'm just not into it. It's just not my thing. But space. I met a girl once. We were getting to know each other, like in a big mingling session, and she said, I guess we were just talking about, like, what are the things you love? What are your hobbies? And she said, oh, I'm fascinated by space. I love space. I love to talk about it. And I just, then and there, so I've never done this in my whole entire life, but it just slipped out. I said, well, we probably won't be friends. I felt terrible after I'd said it. I tried to explain to her, like, it's nothing personal. I just said, well, we can't talk about that if we hang out. But she was obsessed with it too, so it was like, well, what are we going to talk about then? Either way, we were friends, so it was fine. But yeah, it's one of those things for me. It's a big fear, and I don't want to think about it. So move on. Spiders. I think a lot of people are afraid of spiders. I'm not like deathly afraid. I wouldn't freak out, but I do remember sleeping in bed after my car accident, and I lived, like, back in Australia. We live on a property, and so if anyone's Australian, you'll know this. Like, Australia is just full of deadly animals. Like, anything can kill you. But when you grow up there, you kind of know that, and it doesn't freak you out as much. I think tourists more kind of freak out about it, but you're aware, like, you kind of know to check your shoes before you put them on, and, you know, if there might be snakes around here, so don't go there, and, you know, swim between the flags, and don't attract the sharks. Stuff that you kind of grow up with, right? But spiders, I had just had my accident, and I couldn't move very quickly because I still had that moon boot on, and I was still, like, in and out of the wheelchair and the crutches, and it was such a very immobile time for me. But, you know, still super blessed that everything worked out fine for me. But I was sleeping in bed once, and we're out on a property, so it's inevitable that there are going to be bugs and creatures and everything that live inside the house. But I just, I was watching a movie on, like, or a YouTube video or something. It was late at night and everyone was asleep, and all I saw was this little spider crawl, like, you know, in the comforter, like in the doona cover, if it's all wrinkled because it's not fully, like, stretched over you, this spider was, like, coming up on top of the mountain, then going back inside the valley, and it was like, it was up and down, and it appeared, and then it would go away, and then it would appear, and it was coming closer and closer to me, and I should have screamed because I wouldn't have cared if I woke anyone up, but I was trying to stay silent, which was even more scary, and I saw it come up and disappear, and I was freaking out that I just, like, threw my computer off me and just, like, chucked the doona off and tried to hobble away, just, like, rolled out of bed, army rolled, and tried to crawl away without my crutches because I couldn't walk on the moon boot. But yeah, that was so spiders scare me for that, and just because, you know, if you've ever seen an Australian spider, they're a little more intimidating than the typical spiders. Yeah, don't like spiders. So we hate space, spiders, sharks. I think everyone hates sharks. I mean, I don't hate shark, but they're scary, right? If you're ever swimming and there was a shark underneath you, I mean, I don't care if you love them, you still kind of get a little bit wary and you're still, like, a little bit afraid. You know, I don't think anyone's heart kind of slows down at that point. So sharks, I'm just going to say that. Earthquakes and tsunamis, big one. It's weird because I think any natural disaster would scare anybody, but I have, like, a bit of an irrational fear of the earthquakes and tsunamis, only because I was in the earthquake in Japan, and that just has never quite left me, that stress, that anxiety. But also I moved to California, which is prone to earthquakes as well, so I'm not really doing myself any favors with that one. I am just actively working through that anxiety and making sure that it doesn't cause any more problems for me. But that's a big fear of mine. One that is actually really interesting that I thought about that I should definitely make a big old conversation for a podcast or something in the playtest Patreon videos, but Impostor Syndrome. I am kind of afraid of being found out, which sounds crazy, I know, because Impostor Syndrome is all about basically you kind of fake it well, and then you don't want anyone to know how well you're faking it. I've made no secret of the fact that I was learning a lot of this as I went, and I think, being open like that, being open in that way has kind of made me a little bit less stressed about being found out, because in essence, I found myself out to everybody, but it is still a bit of a fear of mine that someone might ever, come across, my business or my Etsy, like my work, my art, my journals, and just look at me and say, well, that's all fake. Like, you didn't study that. That's not worth anything. I don't know. What's that saying about me? But imposter syndrome was something that I really, really struggled with for a long time, probably before I started making this YouTube channel. It was a big thing that I used to struggle with. If ever I had like a really good moment or I was really proud of something, I was always worried that someone was going to not validate that, or to try and bring me out of that happiness because I hadn't earned it. I don't know, I felt like I wasn't allowed to feel good about my art unless I'd studied art history, or if I knew exactly how the mediums worked, or made sure that I only used archival paints, because then people would think that I was low quality, and like, I don't know, it's wrapped up in a whole bunch of stuff. But I think a lot of people in creative industries feel this sense of imposter syndrome, so I think that's definitely one to note down to talk about at a later date, but probably for a podcast. And this is the last one that I had. It's super dumb, but I have this fear. I don't have it anymore because it happened. This fear that when you sing and no voice comes out, I think a lot of people think that that's something that they'll never happen in their life, but it would be a very embarrassing moment. Maybe it's more embarrassment than fear, but I get afraid that if I had to sing out loud, that no noise would come out, and that I'd also crack. Anyway, so long story short, I went to an audition. I didn't realize that we had to be singing that day. So I was just told that we were going back in to read sides, which is just like a little acting bit. And I kind of got there and they said, well, you'll be singing. And they gave me the music. I'm also terrible at learning music. I need a lot of time is my point. I'm not like terrible, but you can't just spring it on me. I messed up the words in an audition once, like, stupidly. I was doing Love by Nat King Cole and I put the E and the V the wrong way. But this audition, I went to go and sing, and we had to like go in our falsetto, which was even worse, because if I did have a great voice, which I don't, it would definitely not be that high. I would not be a tenor. But we had to go into our falsetto, and I went to go and sing it. It was strong, it was wrong, and nothing came out for the first like 2 or 3 counts of that bar. And is that even what you call it? I don't know. I was honestly just kind of passed out in my head a little bit. I was so embarrassed. Everyone else was watching. It was an audition, so we've got the nerves of that as well. I'm also not a singer. I've never told anyone I was a singer. So the fact that I'm doing it, I'm stepping outside my comfort zone to give it a go. It was just terrifying. And not only that, when my voice did come back, I cracked. So it all happened at once, and it happened very, very quickly, and I'm happy to say that I probably wouldn't be as upset to do that again, because, the world didn't end. I thought it would. Honestly, I thought the world would end if that ever happened to me, and it didn't. Everything's fine, everyone's happy, and we've all moved on. So probably a good thing to face your fears sometimes. I'm not going to go face any sharks anytime soon. I'm definitely not going out to space, but I don't think it's the end of the world. Fear is, some quote somewhere, isn't it, like, fear is the only thing that really keeps us alive? Or, I don't know. You don't want to be living in fear, though. That's a topic for another time, I guess. But thanks for watching today's JUNICORN piece. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the topic of discussion. I'm kind of nervous to ask this, but if you have any fears you want to share, leave them in the comments. I feel like it's just going to be a bunch of people talking about terrible stuff that I don't want to know about. But if you feel like you need to get it off your chest, be my guest, and I will see you in another JUNICORN video in a couple of days. Until then, thanks for watching. Bye!